Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. So I got Magandang Umaga, Kamusta, Aking Maga Kaibagan. That's Filipino, or Tagalog. For those of you who don't speak Filipino, that is going to be good morning. How are you, my friends? Salamat for coming and taking a look at my channel, looking at my videos. Hopefully you appreciate it, and hopefully the words no longer block the board like people were telling me. And of course, for my French people, bonjour, comment allez-vous? Merci beaucoup for coming and looking at my videos. Doing my meilleur for you guys, pour toi, you know. What else? I'm gonna make sure that I do the absolute best to try to bring you the best possible videos. Je te promets. So anybody who doesn't speak French, basically said hello. How are you? And thank you very much for coming and checking out my channel. My mayor, doing my best. Je te promets is I promise you. I get a lot of my French from music. I learned like the words, like the phrase of what the song is called, and then some of the different, words, I speak. I just kind of get them from song lyrics and stuff like that. And then I have a lot of friends that are from the Congo in Africa, so they speak a lot of French there. Anyways, as always, at the end of the video, I have the chess puzzles for you, as always, appreciate it very much. Everybody stopping by. If you hit me with a subscribe, I'd appreciate it very much. Merci, salamat, gracias, whatever your language is. Thank you in your language. So I have 672 subscribers right now. I'm inching ever closer to that 1,000. But if you guys are ready, I'm ready. Let's go ahead and take a look at this game here. All right, so we got knight to f3. So we have knight to f6, c4, g6. So we have knight to c3. We have d5, pawn takes d5, knight takes d5. And so we have queen to b3. We're kind of having like a little small repeat of what we had before, except last time, we had the h4 situation, which wasn't bad. This is definitely shown by Wesley as a really good opening to play. We're just putting a little bit of pressure on this d5 knight here. So we have knight back to b6. So we have d4. We have bishop to g7, and we have bishop to f4. You definitely don't want to just go, grabbing pawns. Let's say like, bishop was to take because you'd run into this. Now that it is pinned, you're just going to be able to push e3. Even if you try to defend it some kind of way, you're still going to be, messed up with your bishop. Going back after bishop to g7, also what was possible as well as e4. Kind of like, thinking about that same idea, where you don't want to just go take pawns, because after bishop to h6, not only can you not castle, but then you also have rook to d1 coming. And it's kind of hard to find somewhere to put your bishop. So coming back to what we had, like I said, we have bishop to f4. We have bishop to e6. And so queen over to a3. So we have a knight to c6. We have e3. There's just way too much pressure on this pawn, the queen and then the knight and then the bishop's coming all down. So we have castles for black, bishop to e2. Oh yes, we have the just like we had before, we have the English opening, the Anglo-Indian, Anglo-Grunfeld defense. As you guys see earlier on, there are a lot of remnants of the Grunfeld and stuff in this particular opening. Even though it's like slightly different, but so we have a5, and then we have queen to c5. Definitely a really strong position for white. And so we have knight to d5. So knight takes d5. We have queen takes d5. We have queen back down to c3. We do have a4, which is the novelty of the game. First time we've ever seen this in play ever. Now, if we go back here after queen takes d5, also what was possible was queen to c1. And, we would see probably something like queen to d7 castles. The main idea behind keeping the queen on this half-open file is the pressure that you have on this pawn. So, you don't want to, you want to always maintain the pressure on your opponent's position as much as humanly possible. So that's just a way to be able to do that. And of course, c2 would have ran into, a bishop f5 situation. So, like I said, we had queen to c3. We did have a4. And so we have castles for white. Queen to D7 for black. We have B4, and so we have A takes B3 en passant. For those of you, and that's a French term, so that's it's kind of fitting that we have a French player with the en passant, which is French for in passing. If for those of you who aren't familiar with en passant, in the top right hand corner, I'll put a card up there, a video I made about it, and then that way you'll kind of have the rules and understanding about en passant. So we have A takes B3, and so we have bishop to D5, and so we have B4, and so queen to F5. And now this is actually kind of a wasted tempo. So if you want to go ahead and pause the video and see how Wesley So actually punished this wasted tempo, feel free. Okay, cool. It probably, I think a lot of you guys probably would have got it. It's a pretty natural looking move. The move is bishop to D3. And so it just kind of like exclams the fact that queen to F5 really didn't do anything. It wasn't that it was a horrible move, but it just kind of wasted some time, and that's going to become, important here in a minute. So after queen back to D7, we have rook takes A8, and we have B5. And after knight to D8, you just win a clear pawn. And that was the problem with that move. It's not that it was horrible, like I said, but it's like you just did this just to kind of go back to where you were at the beginning. And so it didn't really do anything for you, in trying to press your position forward. So we see queen takes C7, bishop takes C7. We have knight to E6, bishop back to G3. And we have rook to A3 and rook to D1. We have F5 and we have bishop to E5. Now, bishop to E5 is not a bad move. I mean, it's still pretty strong for white. But it does allow bishop takes F3 and then pawn takes F3. And then, we have a situation where white structure is somewhat damaged. They're not losing, but it's just, probably a little bit better was to, let's go back here to F5, was to move knight to E5. Because then it just gets away from any of the captures here on F3 and just doesn't damage your structure. It makes it a little bit easier to play. So for a lot of you guys out there, when you're looking at pawn structures and stuff like that, it's not that double pawns are just the end of the world, but as a human, it's going to be a lot easier to play with a more sound structure than if you were to double or triple your pawns, because it does become, as a human being, it does become kind of hard to play those positions. Even if you have some good technique, it takes a lot of care to play with those types of pawn structures. And so after let me go back here. So after knight to E5, just kind of running through a string of moves, you probably see bishop to H6, knight to D7, F4, pawn takes F4, bishop takes F4, bishop takes F4, knight takes F4, and then bishop back to F1, just protecting this G2 square. And as you can see, I mean, you have an extra pawn. Yeah, you do have two isolated pawns here, but it's a little bit healthier and easier to play than to have the double pawns. But like I said, we have bishop E5, so we have bishop takes F3, pawn takes F3, bishop takes E5, and then we have pawn takes E5. And as you can see, it's kind of in all honesty, it's a little ugly, like the pawn structure. It's not the easiest looking to play. So you definitely want to try to stay away from that if you can. It just makes it a little bit easier for you to play, especially psychologically and stuff. So we have rook to C3. So we have F4. We have bishop to C5, and we just kind of have a lot of shifting around coming up over the next 10 to 15 moves. So I'll just kind of run through them real quick. So we have bishop to F1. We got king to F7. We have rook to D8. We have knight to E4, bishop to D3, knight back to C5, and then we have bishop to E2. We have rook to C2, bishop to F1, knight to E4, bishop to D3, rook to C1 with check. The king comes to G2, of course, only move. Well, I mean, the bishop could have retreated, but that's another move also. So we have knight back to C5, bishop to F1, knight back to E4, and then rook over to H8. We have H6, rook to H7 with check. We have king to F8, rook to H8 with check, king to F7, and we have bishop to D3. So knight comes to C5. So as you can see, we have just kind of a lot of repeating positions and stuff, almost kind of getting towards draw. But we have bishop to E2, rook to C2, bishop to F3, rook to B2, rook to H7 with check. King comes up to F8. We have bishop to D5. We have E6, We have bishop to c4, rook to c2. We have bishop back to f1. So as you can see, even though, I mean, you have a bishop as white, it's becoming really hard to try to really do anything with it, because it is kind of blocked by its own pawn over here. So we have bishop to d3, and then rook takes f2. We have king to g1, rook to f3, rook takes b7, rook takes e3. We have bishop to c4. We have g5, b6, rook to e1 with check, king comes to g2. We have rook to b1, bishop to e6, and we have rook to b2 with check. And yeah, that would have been bad. Okay, yeah. We have knight to c5, and we have rook to b8. So we have king to e7. We have bishop takes f5. We have pawn takes g4. We have rook to c8. We have knight to a6, and we have rook to c7. And I wanted to stop it here because, I mean, I think for some people that move might look kind of weird, because you're thinking like, wait a minute, like, because, you know, in your mind you're thinking, okay, you know, the knight is a lot less valuable than the rook. So I mean, I think maybe, like I said, a couple people out there might be looking like, why are we just going to be giving the rook away? Like, it looks like you're just like giving away the exchange, right? Well, at the end of the day, we do have, after knight takes c7, we have pawn takes c7. And as you can see now, the bishop is holding this like defensive square for the rook, and the king doesn't have any way to, you know, make any progress towards the pawn. So the pawn is going to force its way to a queen, and there's literally nothing black can do about it. So seeing that, and like I said, when I first looked at the game, I was like, wait a minute, what? So it took me a minute to be like, oh, okay, I get it. But I thought it was strange too when I first saw it. So if you thought it was strange, we're in the same boat. All right, so we had, because of that, we did have rook to, king to e8. And so rook to c8 with check, king back down to e7. We see rook to c7 again, trying to see if we can, hook that up again. We have king to f8, and we have rook to c6. We have f3, and we have b7. We have rook takes b7, rook takes a6. And because, like, if we go back here, after b7, if you had something like, knight to b8, rook to c8 with check, would be picking up the knight. So there really isn't a way to defend against it, because if you don't do anything, I mean, this pawn is gonna, promote. So you really just have to give the rook, give the knight away. So like I said, we do have rook takes a6, and after f2, we do have king to f1, and it is in this position that Maxime Vachier-Lagrave does resign the game. So that is that. So getting over here to the puzzles here, the puzzle I gave for you last time, it's a pretty long one, but like I said, it was a blockade, and it starts off with the tactic, a fork. It doesn't look like a true fork, because, I mean, it's not really supported by anything at the moment, but after you run through the moves, it should become a little more clear. So we have queen takes b4, we'd see a5, bishop to h6, bishop takes h6, knight to b3, we got queen to b2, queen to d4 with check, rook to f2. We have knight takes a1. We have bishop takes f8. We have h4, and we have knight g to e2. And after knight g to e2, if we did take the bishop, we would see bishop takes d6, knight to c2, and then we'd see knight to c1, and you're going to be losing this knight here. So like I said, it was a pretty long one. Going to the next one here. This is a blockade as well. Yep, it's, I didn't see this one. There's, even though I'm like a fairly strong player, there's still a lot that I don't personally see in these tactics. It's just not really, it's really weird to visualize some of these movements that are done. You're just like, because it just seems like you're throwing pieces away. And that's not normally the first thing that comes to people's mind. It's just like putting a piece on pre, which is another French word meaning intake. Anyway, a little chess terminology for you. Well, like I said before, salamat for coming and taking a look at my video. Merci beaucoup for all my French people out there. And I will see you guys in the next video. But, comment, subscribe, and like. Let me know how you like the new setup. Hopefully, I've been tweaking it. Hopefully, it's not taking up, it's not covering the board anymore. Or at least if it is, it's not so horrible where you just can't see anything. So let me know how you like it in the comments. And I'll be checking back in the next couple hours to try to kind of see what it looks like because these are kind of test videos at the moment. But like I said, salamat, merci. I will see you guys in the next video. All right.